Super. Well, welcome everyone. Good evening. My name is Erin Marr, and I'm the co-lead for Parkways for People, and I'll be moderating tonight's discussion. I just want to say thank you so much to all of you for joining us and to talk about the future of Lansdowne Park. This is a park that belongs to all of us. It's been an important gathering place for over 150 years, and it just has incredible potential as a place for people. Tonight is all about getting informed and hearing your views and visions for the next chapter of Lansdowne. We really believe that we will only get this right if the community gets engaged and organized. And I think we can continue to be hopeful and inspired by the possibilities that Lansdowne can bring to our city. So thank you for your presence tonight, and thank you for your engagement. Just a few housekeeping items. We are recording this session. It will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. You can check it out later on. We are planning on summarizing the themes that we gathered from tonight's event. We're not sure yet how that's going to materialize, but you can stay tuned for that. We do ask that everyone keep their mic on mute until they're called upon to speak. That will just make things a lot smoother on our side. I think that's about it for now. So we would like to recognize that the National Capital Region and Lansdowne Park are located on unceded territory of the Algonquin-Anishinaabe Host Nation. The peoples of the Algonquin-Anishinaabe Host Nation have lived on this territory for millennia, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to be present on this territory. I would like to say that as we are developing ideas and visions for the space of Lansdowne, that we consider this land recognition and what that could mean and how that could be incorporated into some of the visions that are put forward. So if you have ideas in that regard, we'd love to hear them as part of the community forum. So who are we? Every time I see this picture, I find it funny, but this is Parkways for People. We are a grassroots group that's focused on promoting transformative change to our public spaces, and that includes the NCC Parkways, which are public lands, and the adjacent public spaces, which is, in this case, Lansdowne. We are inspired every day by the potential that exists in our city. It's really helpful when you have a group like this to kind of exchange ideas and inspiration. So we're just kind of, I think the smiles on our faces sort of say it all. We just really enjoy the work that we do. We are just a bunch of individuals. We're not associated with the city or the NCC in any regard. And we do have a lot of fun in developing these ideas and working for that transformative change. So why us? Why are we hosting this consultation tonight? As I said, we're hosting it because we really believe that the parkways and the transformative change that we're seeking is really established by examining the other public lands that adjoin those public spaces. And of course, Lansdowne is abutted by Queen Elizabeth Driveway, which is very near and dear to our heart. You can see through this picture from 1927 that Queen Elizabeth Driveway actually went through Lansdowne site, which is an interesting concept. Not suggesting we do that today, but it just sort of acknowledges that these public spaces of ours go through an evolution, and they're, what we have now does not need to be sort of the end of the story. They're kind of constantly evolving, and they do provide inspiration. When you look at them, many years later. We also see this other photo from Queen Elizabeth Driveway that kind of gives us some inspiration for Lansdowne as well, which is the relationship that we once had with the canal waterways. You can see that we actually had sort of a beach at one point, on the canal, which is kind of neat to see. So these are very powerful images for us, and I just wanted to share some of the history that kind of shows that what has been can be a source of inspiration, and it shows the evolution of these spaces. So there are sort of two portions of the evening tonight. The first portion will help you kind of understand where we're at with Lansdowne, what the development involves, what we might want to consider in thinking about the possibilities, and what other cities have done with their public spaces. The second part will be the community forum. We'll have some local community associations kicking off this piece. and then we will open the forum to you to speak if you wish, to share your ideas, your visions, your views. Really, we want to encourage you that no idea is too big, no idea is too small. This is a very non-judgmental space. We're hoping it can be pretty informal. So please feel free to just share whatever's on your mind. We're very happy to hear your feedback, your comments on Lansdowne. But we want to make sure that we're clear that we want to remain respectful in the open forum portion. There may be people here with strong views about what's been put forward, and we just want to make sure that everyone is delivering those comments in a respectful way. Given the numbers on the call tonight, we just want to make sure too that you're just conscientious of your time and to keep your comments as brief as you can, and hopefully focus on just one or maybe two ideas before giving time over to others on the call. We are really, of course, excited to hear what people have to say, but if there's comments that you have that you'd rather put in the chat, please go ahead and do that. We will be summarizing those comments in the same way as the verbal ideas that we've heard. So just to acknowledge too that there is a proposal on the table, and that's sort of a bit of the starting point for us to hear today. I think Mark Gowdy will go into that in a little while, but really with the proposal on the table, that sort of opens the door and creates a bit of a window of opportunity to explore how Lansdowne is used as a public space. And so this is sort of the why now, I guess, side of things. So, and again, we really believe that, we'll only really get this right at Lansdowne if the community is engaged and the community's views are taken into account. So with that, I think Sean Menard, City Councillor, is up, and Sean will be providing us with some opening remarks. Over to you, Sean.
Thank you so much, Erin, and to Parkways for People for organizing this. I think this is probably the first of many community discussions. Obviously, it's been a lot in the past, but just given the new proposal post-election, I think you'll see a lot of the community associations surrounding the area and across the city want to engage in this conversation. And I appreciate you, kind of kicking us off with an ideas session. It makes a big difference to have these type of discussions. And one of the things we said last term was that consultation on this is of utmost importance, and we don't want to put the cart before the horse, that we need to consult, we need to have these discussions before we come up with full-fledged proposals. And so, we had put out last term a document it was called A Place for People, Lansdowne, a place for people, a place for families, a place for mobility, a place for city life. And for us, this was about how we improve the park through making it a people place and placemaking. So we talked about things like providing more pedestrian space and reducing some of those pinch points that you see across the site, and making sure that we don't have those kind of loud vehicles in the evening going through, disturbing as you're on a patio or just walking through the site, that we can, have access to the parking garages on either side, but eliminate some of that disruptive traffic that's going through that we get complaints about all the time, and make it, again, more of a place for people. Animate the Aberdeen Square. Obviously, there's a lot of potential there with tables and benches and chairs. We talked about a lot of the improvement in winter use. You see that refrigerator rink that's there. It gets fantastic use. And there's been some other cool events that have come. We want more of that, and I think would make Lansdowne a better place for everybody. And of course, consistent year-round and free space for programming. I think the skate park that's been going on has been incredible. It's been free for teenagers. That sort of activity there really makes sense. You don't see a full-fledged coffee shop at Lansdowne. There's a couple examples, but it's like that would make a big difference. And of course, maintaining public space and transit access. Transit 6 and 7 serve Bank Street very well. The 11. But there is often difficulty in accessing the site, and obviously with the NCC and the Bank Street corridor, you've got a site that is sometimes difficult to access, and so obviously that's going to be extremely important for us going forward. I think with the proposal that's on the table now, obviously we express some concern around consultation with people and making sure that people had their voices heard before we had a lot of approvals, and we say we're gonna do that now. So that's important. I think things like you know, the public green space that exists there and what would be a loss versus not is important to look at. The 40-story towers, the skyscrapers that are proposed for the site, and whether these match the good urban planning and transportation accessibility is a big topic that we need to speak about. Looking at the affordable housing component and you know, whether it's truly affordable or not when we're going to be selling off, if we would sell off public land or not, that is something that is obviously of utmost importance to our community. And of course, how this is going to affect the city in terms of, you know, what we do with the site and the debt taken on as a city, as a public, for what we're getting out of it. So we want to see investment in Lansdowne. I think there's a lot of good ideas to see that investment, but we want to do it in a way that is consultative and we get it right. And you know, I think after the report, the LRT report came out in our city and what it revealed, there's no excuse anymore for not taking the public's opinion. You need constructive critics to get to a better result. And in this case with Lansdowne, I think we're in a new era, and I want that era to be one of consultation and one of just good public design, and that only comes with good constructive criticism for projects and bringing people in. So looking forward to the conversation tonight, and thank you again for hosting us.
Thank you so much, Sean. That summarizes so many things I think that are on people's minds tonight, you know, from housing to public space to financing. I think you've really captured a lot of the things that I think are going to come up later on. So thank you for that introduction and pointing to that report. That's a really valuable resource that hopefully we can share on our social media as well, just to get people kind of give people that background and those ideas. I think people would really benefit from that. So thank you so much. So our next speaker is Amélie Cossé. Amélie is a director of Momentum Transport Consultancy in Montreal, who has kindly offered to provide some ideas and views from the viewpoint of transportation at Lansdowne, which is something that's very critical. I mean, anyone who's ever been, you know, near Bank Street or Queen Elizabeth Driveway on a game day knows that that is a huge challenge. So we're curious to hear what you have to say, Amélie, and the floor is yours.
Can you hear me okay? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so thank you, Erin, for the introduction. Good evening, Councillor, and good evening, everyone. I want to just say before I start on this that, well, first off, I haven't been commissioned to be here tonight, so I'm just really speaking my own mind. And as Erin just said, dream big. So that's what I did when Parkways for People approached me and we talked about Lansdowne. And so I really wanted to share what are our ideas in terms of how Lansdowne can be made a place for people. Hopefully these ideas will be then taken by you, the community, the project, and really go on to feed into the next phases of the development. But so just be aware that these are ideas that I'm putting forward. They're not part of the plan. They're not put forward by the city. They're just really ideas to bring some creativity into that room tonight. So moving on to just who am I? I said, so as Erin presented, my name is Amélie. I'm a director at Momentum Transport Consultancy. So we're a progressive transport planning consultancy, originally from London in the UK and now based in Montreal for five years. And through our work in Montreal, in Europe, and in Canada, we really try and always put people at the heart of the spaces that we design and create for. And we think this is really how people then want to use the space and make them successful. So this is why it's so important for us to take that into account. Some of the ideas that I'm going to talk to you about today. So there are really 4 themes that I wanted to cover. The first one is Queen Elizabeth Driveway and how it has such a great potential to be more for Lansdowne in a way, and to be a connection for Lansdowne, but then the rest of the city also with downtown. Then the cycling network and the potential for Lansdowne to really reconnect the cycling network and be a hub for the city. And then an idea around sustainable parking strategies, and finally creating pedestrian streets, which I think will really be a key success point for the future of the space. So to start with,
Sorry, Emily, can I jump in for a sec, please? Are people seeing the slides turning?
are you not seeing it?
No, it's still on the page.
No, it's still on the initial slide.
Okay, wait, let me share again. Sorry, good call. They are turning for me indeed. Sorry, it disconnected me. Okay, sorry, I'm gonna try again. If I disconnect, just move on to the rest of your program and I'll jump back in after.
Sounds good.
Can you see now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. And then if I move back. Okay. Okay, I don't think it's working so well, sorry.
No.
Okay.
Why don't you just not go in
Oh,
screen
that's a,
share?
Did it move? Yeah?
it did.
Okay. Let's try and take it from there. Okay. So the first idea, as I mentioned, okay, now you can see it. So is using Queen Elizabeth Driveway as an active and scenic transit route. You can see here an example of quite an inspirational practice that was done by the city of Banff in Alberta, where they pedestrianized their main street, but kept one corridor as a shared bidirectional bus lane to provide a link and a public transit connection, but still really keeping that space for people with a slow speed of the bus on there at all times. So you can see here with the map, the idea that this could bring to Lansdowne Park. As Councillor was just saying, there's a number of bus services already running on Bank Street, but there is also a real challenge with capacity in terms of that street, and it can't really take much more in terms of future transit. So really tapping into the potential of Queen Elizabeth Driveway as an additional transit route is a great opportunity for the site, as we think. Another example I wanted to bring on this topic is the Toronto Portlands development. So you might have heard about it in the news, but the city of Toronto is redeveloping this whole part of the Portlands, which was a very industrial area. And what's interesting is their phasing approach to this project. So more specifically, there's a whole set of residential buildings coming in. But before going into that stage of the construction, they've developed the whole transport network. And that includes bike lanes, as you can see, some of the bridges here that create new bike lanes, and as well as spaces for public transit. And the idea is really that people get used to using those bike lanes and create a whole new set of users that are already in that space. And then when the buildings will come in, they will already have this whole number of flows and users that they can see, they can have as users of the future retail units, and as a potential to generate economic viability. The second idea that I wanted to present is around the real opportunity of the site location in terms of connecting the cycling network and the rest of the city. You can see here a bit more focused on the map. So I've taken the existing City of Ottawa cycling network. So some of the more recent projects don't necessarily show up here, but you can still really see the great opportunity to be a place of connection between some of the existing lanes on O'Connor Street and Holmwood Avenue, the great space that you have on the QED and the cycleway that's on there, and how really by creating these new connections through the site, you can bring this whole cycling demand going through the site, as well as a number of users that can be coming day to day and use the site for their benefits. Another inspiration for this, and I'm talking from where I am actually, so Montreal, there was a revitalization of a commercial street done in 2020, and they put an express bicycle way on that street. So you might ask, what's the connection between a commercial street and a bicycle way? But actually what's really interesting is now after 2 years of operations, we start seeing the real impacts and benefits that this has generated for all the activity and the retail units. So you can see some of the stats here, but 37 new shops opened on that street in 2021. There was more than a 50% increase in pedestrian traffic. And even last winter, we saw about 90,000 trips made by bike on the bikeway. So it can really show that with the right infrastructure and the maintaining of that infrastructure across the year and 4 seasons, there's a potential to tap again into those additional users cycling through a commercial street. A second example, very quickly, is the Olympic Village in Vancouver as well, which I think has a lot of interesting inspirations to give to Lansdowne Park as well. Mostly because it was developed as a mixed-use development as well, and there was again all the cycling routes that connected through the site, and it really became a cycling hub for the community. People cycling and stopping there for a coffee and then continuing on to their day-to-day travels. So really, again, generating that new connection through a new site. The third idea that I wanted to explore is around the use of parking areas and how to really take a sustainable approach to making the best use of these spaces. The idea here is really to understand the occupancy of those parking areas through a 24-hour period, through the whole year, and ensuring that the spaces can be shared and really used, optimized in their use by all the different programs that are on the site. So with that right understanding and the right data, there's an opportunity to create shared parking spaces between residents at night and visitors during the day, and really making sure that the parking spots are used to the best of their capacity. Another idea is around car sharing schemes, which are becoming more and more well used in residential developments. You can see here a key stat from Communauto, which states that one Communauto on the road is actually the equivalent of 12 personal vehicles. So you can see how creating those spaces is also a way of reducing the traffic that will come to a site like Lansdowne Park. And my final point, and then I will let the evening continue with the other speakers. Transforming Lansdowne Park will be, and I think Councillor mentioned it just before, and I couldn't agree more, into a large pedestrian area. And generating footfall is also a way forward for economic viability and just general economic opportunities for the site. So pedestrian street is, the idea is to create that, to make sure that all the spaces that can be given to the pedestrians are given to them, whilst keeping a vehicular access to the parking areas, of course, but also at flexible times to delivery vehicles that will need to operate through the site. So it's just really this idea of not creating a through route for vehicles, but just keeping them at the edges, and then the internal space can be really given back to the community for use and activation all across the year. The examples here, again, not too far from Montreal, where the pedestrianization of commercial streets has been going on for a couple of summers now. And it's really interesting because whilst it was mostly opposed by retailers at first, you can see now the last results from last year, about 83% of businesses say that their revenue increase was due to pedestrianization. And they really now see it as a great opportunity to have more people coming to their businesses, and the overall placemaking and activity on those streets is just such a great potential for the viability of their retailers. Another last comment, and I will finish on that, is a really interesting study that was published just over the weekend and done by Toronto Metropolitan University, which also states that creative placemaking and really giving those spaces back to people is showing that people spend 50% time more on those spaces, and it again generates more footfall and then more economic opportunities for the development itself. So I will finish on that. Thank you for having me. It was a really great pleasure to share those ideas and to be working and to be here with you tonight. So I hope the conversation can go on around those ideas.
Thank you so much, Emily. That was really, really great. You know, anyone who's ever been at Lansdowne, you know, I think those ideas really resonate. They're really practical. It's great to hear that they have a basis in real transportation planning, because I think, you know, not only do they sort of address some of the challenges that we see with transportation, but they make the place better, right? And that's sort of, it's kind of a win-win. And then of course, with the commercial aspect, right? Win-win-win. So thank you so much for coming here tonight and sharing those ideas. That gives us a great, I think, starting off point for what we might be able to expect, you know, going forward in some of the dialogues that we are going to be having. So thank you.
No worries.
So sort of in that same vein of inspiration, next we have Susan Redding. Susan is a member of Parkways for People and a local resident. She'll be sharing some ideas that we've heard in the past and offering some inspiration from other cities. Over to you, Susan.
All right, thank you very much. I will just get my presentation ready here. And here, let me just share my screen. Okay, and so this is just going to be a brief tour through some ideas that we have heard or discussed ourselves about how to make Lansdowne fun 365 days a year. So this is really just to illustrate what we mean by placemaking, and to talk about the public parts of Lansdowne, specifically, you know, what could we have here that would make it better on days where there's no event or no programming at Lansdowne, because it's not possible to have events and programming every day of the year. And so to sort of even out the peaks and valleys that we sometimes see at Lansdowne in terms of how people are there and what they're up to. So no further ado, some ideas for places. So adding a unique, bold and free feature that people can use that will draw them in to gather and just have a good time in the open space. So these giant swings were installed in a park in Boston and have become a huge draw for people of all ages, but particularly young adults. A splash pad or a water feature that actually is, you know, something that is inviting to play on. In my mind, this is one of the big missing pieces in the current iteration of the Lansdowne Park. The splash feature it's not really recognizable as a splash feature, and it just doesn't add very much. But you can see from shipyards in North Vancouver that if you put in something big and colorful, you know, families with young children are going to flock to it, and you can combine it with a more artistic presentation. This photo from Jameson Square in Portland is a really cool feature that's both a sculpture and a swimmable water feature. And again, people just flock to it as one feature. The current park that we have is really geared sort of, I feel, to older kids in terms of the play structure. And so I think by adding in, outdoor fitness park and toddler play structures will help more people of different ages have something to do when they come to the park and it's a nice day, and can also just promote new ways of using the space. Food trucks or takeout huts. You know, Lansdowne has a lot of restaurants. It's not always possible, or it's not what you want to go and have a sit down meal. So if we have fast food options that are closer to the public part of the park where people are playing basketball or skateboarding or just hanging out on the Great Lawn, I think that it would make an inviting space for people to stay and play and just be able to grab something to eat or drink while they're there. Having space for Indigenous art, stories, and reconciliation, I think should be a critical part of Lansdowne 2.0, and that consultations with the Indigenous communities in Ottawa should be taking place to make sure that their history, their unique culture is represented and acknowledged here. Community band shell or assembly space. This is something that I think would add some, or we think would add some sort of mid-range programming or less programmed programming, where community bands, small groups could put on micro concerts or just have some space to gather and do presentations, and would just, again, increase public's ability to use Lansdowne without there being an event there. A photo destination. We all know that people seek this out now, something unique, lively, colorful that they can take a picture next to post on social media. As an example from our own city, I think that Lansdowne should be looking at adding something more impactful, cool, and unique. In terms of winter activities and amenities, right now we've got a closed canal and people looking to have some fun outdoors. Could be more something that happens more in the future. In the city of Calgary and in some other places, the city actually sets up bonfire sites that you can book online and arrange impromptu, or not, I guess not impromptu, you can arrange a casual gathering with friends. Just bring your own wood. So there's plenty of space to do that at Lansdowne. And if it was coupled with some other ideas for winter fun, I think it would be another way to get people to the site. Connecting Lansdowne to the Rideau, this is something that, Parkways for People is really concerned with. There is this patch of land just outside the gate of Lansdowne. It's actually NCC property, which means it's in a little bit of a jurisdictional issue. But if that area could be connected, especially in the summer, and enlivened with some Adirondack chairs, picnic space, or other amenities that people would pass, like from Lansdowne to this space, we could really see the unique connection here, which would be to have a canal swimming structure that people could access or use Lansdowne as a base to head over there and really have a unique and very, very Ottawa experience. Oh, sorry. So that, in a nutshell, was a very, very small selection of the many, many ideas that we've heard or brainstormed ourselves of ways that we can just enliven Lansdowne and make it a better place 365 days a year.
Thank you, Susan. That was awesome. It's so true. Just the idea, I mean, there's so many great ideas in there, but, even the food trucks idea, it's true. The link between the commercial element of Lansdowne and sort of the more open space, the kind of play space, the recreational space, is sort of missing, right? And the sort of the link that what would compel you to go is just to know that you could, as you say, grab a quick snack and a drink, and I think that's probably a mutually beneficial idea, right, for both for the retailers and the public. So that's. I mean, there's so many great ideas, but that one's so practical. And so thank you so much for sharing. Next we have Mark Gowdy. He is the president and CEO of Ottawa Sport and Entertainment Group. Mark will be providing a little bit of background of the Lansdowne site, where we've been and where we're headed to. So over to you, Mark.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for having me. That was great presentations ahead of this, Susan and Emily. Can you see the slide I just put up? Are we good? Okay. So let me tell you about a little bit, and I've been given 5 minutes here, so I'm going to do my best to stay to the 5 minutes. So we are the Ottawa Sports and Entertainment Group. We are the partner with the city on the development of Lansdowne. So what I can talk to is the stuff that is kind of under our management, which is the stadium facilities, the stadium, the arena, and the retail space, the horticulture building, the Aberdeen Pavilion, and the parkland at the back of Lansdowne. That's city managed space, so I can't talk to that. And Susan, a lot of your ideas really relate to that space, so that's not my area of expertise or management. So let me first just remind you of kind of what Lansdowne looked like in the olden days. Concrete parking lot basically is what it was, with some cool things that happened, like the Ottawa exhibition every year, but other than that, kind of not a very spectacular place. And this is, where we are today and what we've created so far on our destination, I think, to make Lansdowne the best place that it can be. I think we know, I've grown up in Lansdowne or in Ottawa. Lansdowne's an important neighborhood. It's an important part of our region, and it's an important tourist destination as well. I think it's become rediscovered itself as Ottawa's gathering place. And I think Aaron, you mentioned that up front. I think that's true. Over the last 8 years since it's come back online in 2014, we've welcomed over 4 million visitors. And before COVID, we did 4.3 million visitors to Lansdowne. So that's pretty spectacular, kind of given where it was, which was probably attracting 400,000, maybe 300,000 people before kind of the redevelopment happened. Over 4,000 full and part-time jobs, so it's become an economic hub as well in our community. And personally speaking, I shared this with the Parkways folks on Friday. It's important to me. I grew up in Lansdowne, or in Ottawa. I went to university here. I've spent my whole career here. I've never left Ottawa. I grew up going to the exhibition, going to Rough Rider games. We had tickets on the South Side stands. My uncle was the original owner of the Ottawa 67s. So, I've been coming to the rink since I could walk. My dad sold tickets for 67s games. So this is a really important place for me as well personally. And I'm really proud of the job I have and the opportunity that we have over the next couple of years to continue to evolve Lansdowne. And if you've had a look at the proposal, this is I will tell you, conceptual drawings, right? We're not at the design phase yet. The request from the city to us was to come with a proposal that we could start public consultation around, and we'll get to design and what final things look like in that. So these are artist renderings of kind of what we were proposing to the city. I think if we go back to Lansdowne 1.0, where we currently are, there's kind of two things that I think we all would wish that we would have done differently. The first thing is I think there's not enough density at Lansdowne, and I think that's acknowledged by a whole bunch of folks that we've got 3 condominiums. The one that's the Rideau here nearest to the canal, the Vibe, and a row of townhouses that abut the back of the retail space. About 235 units in total. So not a whole lot of retail, or not a whole lot of residential. And I think that was a miss. There should have been more residential put into the site. And I think the second thing was the facilities themselves. So the old Ottawa Civic Center structure, if you're from here or if you've been down there, is the north side stands that sits on top of the old Civic Center arena that's underneath it. So affectionately now is known as TD Place, but that's that old Centennial 1967 structure. I think the thoughts in the exuberance to get going on Lansdowne was that would last another 50 years, and that's just not feasible. It's a functionally obsolete building right now. We're seeing that it is energy inefficient like you wouldn't believe. I think it's probably one of the worst city-owned buildings in the city for energy efficiency, and it leaks, and it's not going to last. So when we got to COVID in 2000, we had an opportunity to take a little step back and understand kind of what the first 8 years looked like. And when we look at what should happen going forward, what our thoughts on that would be. And we're dealing with a functionally obsolete building at the end of the day. So the Northside Stadium and the Northside Stadium and the arena needed to have something be done to it. We looked at retrofitting and refurbishing, just wasn't feasible. And we recommended, and the city, I think, accepted that these facilities really need to be replaced. The city, so since 2020, when we started with these conversations with the city, we've gone through 3 different council meetings. And last spring, council approved our proposal in concept and in principle, which was to replace the city assets. And they're kind of in 3 buckets. They're the arena, and our proposal is to replace it with a 55-seat event center. So more than an arena. Arena would be part of it for sure, but something that's capable of doing more than just sports and hockey for sure. And that's it here in the east berm, attaching the north side stands to the south side stands. Smaller than the current Civic Center is right now. So it was about 10,000 seats. It's about 9,500 seats now. And we'd be taking it down to what I think the right number is, which is about 5,500 seats. replacing the north side stands with 11,200 seats. Right now, the north side stands, same thing. It is 14,000 seats, and we'd be coming down a little bit to 2,000 or 11,200. The capacity would be higher. We'd have more social space, and we're finding that that's good flexible space. You see people when they go to Red Blacks games, they're in the end zones, throughout the concourse. They're on the railing in the east section. So we would design some on the edges of the stadium, some flexible social space that people could watch the game from, but they don't have fixed seats associated with them. And the third piece is replacing the retail. So we have a strip of retail right now, which is where the Good Life Fitness Center is, and down that strip, which abuts the current arena, that would be replaced with a new retail podium. And that retail podium would be the podium on top of which would sit residential units. And our recommendation was that there'd be 1,200 units. We've grouped them into 3 towers, but that's really for somebody else to figure out. And as part of that, our recommendation, in keeping with the OP, is that 1,200 unit or 120 units or 10% be designated affordable housing designated units. So that's kind of what the proposal was. Part of the proposal for Lansdowne Park, but not ours, is enhancement of the public space as well. And I would have suggested, if I was thinking, but we should have probably had Dan Chenier from the city to come on and talk about that. But I won't do it justice, so I'm going to leave that. But part of this is to reimagine this space. I think this discussion is awesome, because this is the kind of thing that should go into a reimagined urban park at Lansdowne. And from my perspective, really excited to kind of continue on with kind of where we've been going and figure out what the next iteration of Lansdowne looks like. It's about, somebody mentioned the word placemaking, and I think that is what it's about. I think the city needs new facilities. Its existing facilities are just antiquated, and as a destination, we're going to start missing out on things that just won't come here because the facilities are just not capable of hosting them anymore. I think in a couple more years, we won't be able to have the men's World Curling Championships that happen in April. The facilities just won't be able to support that. And I think those are important things that happen in Ottawa. I think we concentrate on, we use the words unique, experiential, and destination based. And to me, that's what Lansdowne should be. It should be things you can't find other places in the city. It should be experiential. You should be able to do something when you're at Lansdowne, and the space should kind of embody that. And it should be destination based. Again, we're going to talk a little bit about transportation at the end, but it's not an easy place to get to. And there's a lot of, if things live in Orleans or in Canada, they don't probably need to live at Lansdowne. So, they need to be destination based stuff we do, that when we rebuild out the retail space that sits there as the podium. And allows us to address some of the deficiencies that we have. We talked about, environmental is an issue. Sustainability is an issue for Lansdowne right now in those old facilities. Accessibility, and just allows us to fix one of the things that should have happened with Lansdowne 1.0. And that's just put more people on site, which is easier on the community for sure. In terms of transportation, it's one of our biggest challenges. I wish I could wave a magic wand and there'd be an LRT that was running underneath Bank Street that we could access, but we don't have that. So we kind of have to deal with what we're dealt. I think from a transportation perspective, that's been one of Lansdowne's success stories. I think that's something that everybody feared going into 2014. And the modal shares, we've been able to meet or exceed all of the modal shares in terms of access to Lansdowne in things other than cars. For instance, the Red Blacks games, a third of the people come by car to neighborhood or to the parking lot. 2/3 get there some other way, right? Whether it be OC Transpo or the shuttles that we run from different places, or taxis or walking or bikes and all of that stuff. And I think, to be successful going forward, we need to do a whole lot more of that. There's no magic thing that's going to happen with transportation, I think, at Lansdowne. Access is important. We only have 2 ways in. One, our main entrance, which is Bank Street. and the other off the QED. And I think we need a robust transportation plan that, you know, allows us to figure out how we do all of these things better over time. Emily, you talked on some of those things kind of up front. And, you know, I love the idea. It's never going to solve our transportation problems, but I love the idea of being able to tie in the canal some way. And I think it would be awesome, particularly in a very Ottawa thing to be able to do, to be able to take something from downtown and from Dow's Lake to be able to access Lansdowne as well. I think in terms of next steps, so from our perspective, we keep working and refining this proposal and this plan and the business model with the City of Ottawa, our partner. The city, and I think Sean will talk to it a little bit right now, is going to run through a pretty robust public engagement process, which I think is going to be integral to, you know, what this looks like at the end of the day. And I think the program is to be back at City Council, you know, end of the summer, beginning of the fall, something like that, to give an update and provide, you know, updated proposal and presentation on what the business case looks like. So I'm going to pause there, but I'm going to hang around for the rest of the meeting, and happy to come back and answer any questions you might have.
Thank you so much, Mark. That was a great overview, and thanks for showing some of that, those visuals. I think that really helps people understand sort of what's on the table. And as you say, thank you for also pointing out that this is approved in principle. So these developments are not carved in stone. The way that they've been mocked up there is sort of notional to give an idea of the general direction this development is headed in, but certainly there is time, and I this is sort of segue to the next speaker, but
and Aaron, I screwed up.
consultation.
My nice marketing people put some nice slides together that I didn't get through, but if we have time at the end, and if anybody's interested, we just have a couple of slides. Most of them are a presentation that just talk about, show what the cityscape looks like and what the event center and what the field and stands would look like. So happy to come back to those if that's
yeah, that would be super. You know, for me, seeing that strip kind of the exhibition way, that visual was really powerful. If you have that one on the go, that would be awesome too later on if people are interested. Thank you very much for offering that, Mark. That's super. So we will now just segue right into kind of what's next in terms of, you know, we've got a proposal on the table. It's notional. It's you know, it's not yet baked in. You know, I think most of us would expect that we would be sort of consulted and be able to provide our views on what that means for the people and what that means for Lansdowne in terms of the public space that it occupies. So we look forward to hearing more about the upcoming consultations from Sean Moore. Sean Moore is the Director of Lansdowne Redevelopment Project for the City of Ottawa. And the floor is yours, Sean.
Hi, thanks for having me tonight. So I'd like to introduce myself. You gave a small introduction. I'm a professional planner, so Emily's and Susan's slides were exciting for me because that's at the root of my passion is urban planning. So those were great slides and great information that I enjoyed seeing. I've been with the city since 2005. As a bit of background on myself, I've worked in development review and worked across in the planning department across the urban and suburban and rural areas of the city on lots of different files. And as you just said, I have just taken on this director role recently, just before Christmas. So I'm excited to work with the community and staff and Mark and OSEG. So most recently, some people may be familiar with, if you are familiar with me, probably the Ottawa Hospital file.
I think Sean's frozen there. We'll just give him a minute to maybe unfreeze. Oh.
You didn't lock me out, so I'm going to use this time to go through my slides that I didn't
Sure,
get.
great.
But what
Why
do you
not?
think
Go
about
ahead.
that as Sean kind of reboots himself here?
Perfect.
So this is if you were standing in the log cabin, so the closest part to Bank Street, and looking through to the east end. back in the new east end zone would be the event center. So underground here is where the arena and the performance area is. And best we can, we try to repurpose, you know, both sides so we can use it for, you know, for hockey, and we can also use it for events in the building, and we can also use it as part of the end zone for football and other things that are at TD Place as well. And over here is a new north side stands, replacing the old north side stands. We had asked for some feedback on it, and the biggest by far comments we got back was that it needs a roof. So that's one thing we'll be exploring as well, whether a roof can be part of this program. And Aaron, the pictures you were talking about, here's a couple of, again, I will stress these are conceptual, right? The city will go out for an RFP for the air rights, which means the ability to build buildings on top of the retail podium. So, you know, that will depend on, you know, who ultimately builds this, but this was our concept of what it might look like, both in the day and in the night. The actual, if you look at the streetscape where, again, Good Life is and that row of retail is, it would be back, I think, about 3 to 5 meters from where that is right now. And that's just because of the new pitch of the north side stands, much more upright. We create more space to be able to build into. So we get to pull that back from the place where it is right now, which allows you to do different things on that sidewalk. And that, you know, I can see it as patio space, but, you know, somebody talked about cycling paths or whatever, but to create some space to be able to do something versus having, you know, retail with this, you know, a couple of feet away from the road the way it is right now. And again, just going inside the event center, you know, set up for a concert here, smaller, obviously, than if you've been into the Civic Center right now. A little more normal looking versus that small side we have on one side of the arena and that big side we have on the other. But that's, you know, a graphical representation of what 5,500 seats, but, you know, much smaller building, but I think that serves the purposes of the kind of things that we need to be doing at Lansdowne pretty good. So that's as much time as I can give you.
Well, appreciate you jumping in there with those additional visuals. That definitely provides, I think, more context and something to kind of respond to for people here. So that's great. I'm wondering if Sean, are you? Oh, you here?
Here. Did
Perfect.
I freeze?
You did.
Oh,
you did. We're glad to have you back.
Okay. So I'll just share my screen with a couple of slides. I don't know where I left off, but
I think you were saying you just joined December. Something like
yes.
that.
So here I am, frozen. Okay, so I'll share my screen here. Oops. Oops, I'm not doing this properly, am I?
You saw your desktop there.
There we go. I'm gonna get it now.
There we go. Okay,
thanks. So I have the boring slides here. So I'll walk through a bit of what's going to happen this term of council. So we're looking to bring the zoning for the event center, residential, and the mixed use that the illustrations that Mark was showing forward. We are going to be working on some massing refinements and some directions from council in terms of taking that concept and moving it forward and refining it. Part of going forward to council would also be an approval of the final sports facility construction budget and a funding strategy. So that would be refining as the project gets refined and we see the construction budget and so forth, and understanding all the different inputs into the financial model and how this could be funded. That'll be, again, kind of moving forward through the next stages and rise eventually to council. And I'll have my next slide will kind of show a timeline of this better. I think I heard Mark talk about the air rights over top of the podiums. So that would be the city looking at either a sale or lease of those air rights and understanding what those air rights could yield in terms of defraying construction of the new city facilities. And then this was touched upon a bit, and I think Susan's slides were good at showing all the different ideas for improving the urban area, but we'll be looking forward to bringing a strategic investment plan forward for the urban park in the public realm, and an active transportation, as Emily's presentation showed some good ideas on that aspect. And then also any existing legal agreements that have to be worked out between the city and OSEG, those would have to rise to council as well. So this next slide, if we just go from bottom up, we're going to be rolling out a public engagement strategy, launching hopefully early February, but it would be a comprehensive strategy looking at a variety of different ways to engage the community, business associations, through multiple different tools, surveys, focused meetings, online engagement, and so forth. So that whole strategy will be rolling out, and will really launch the kind of public engagement on not only the getting everyone up to speed on the 2022 concept plan that went to council, but then rolling into what would be the city initiated zoning bylaw a little beyond February for the whole project. And if we just go above that line, the 5 circles, those are all the different kind of elements that we'd be tasked to look at and engage with the community in many respects. So council's asked staff to look at refining that design that Mark illustrated in terms of massing and height and so forth. We'll be looking at the air rights, sending out a request of expression of interest out to the development industry to understand the marketability and the market response to that concept design, and seeing what the market could do and what interest there is in doing the overbuild over top of the podiums with the air rights. The planning process is fundamentally that zoning piece, which would be supported by all the supporting studies like a heritage impact assessment, transportation studies, serviceability, and so forth that would launch and go live on the website, and we would engage on the zoning piece. And then all throughout this is the financial review. So as you can imagine, if you change one aspect of the model, if you add more affordable housing or less, or you add less units, or the constructability aspect goes, the costs of construction escalate, then we have to understand how all these different inputs would change the funding strategy. And moving forward, we would bring a business plan to the finance committee to make a recommendation on a final business plan. And the last bubble is all the other inputs that are going to be part of this, which is looking at deeper affordability, looking at how we can deliver in the best way to deliver affordable housing. Obviously, a key is looking at active transportation that we talked about in that public realm strategy. So these would rise eventually to a report to FEDCO, and then following FEDCO go to planning committee and to council sometime, as Mark had indicated, potentially in the fall, end of summer, Q3. So that's kind of the timeline going forward. And if we roll back to today, early February, we'll be looking to launch that complete engagement where we're starting to go out to all the different stakeholders, really on the kind of taking a step back and on that 2022 concept and how we got there going forward. So those are the 2 slides I want to show just on the process and how we'd move forward, and happy to take any questions on that.
Thank you, Sean. That's really informative. There's a lot of process that goes on in the back end. I think more so than maybe we kind of appreciate, and a lot of small steps that are maybe more bureaucratic in nature that maybe some of us can't quite understand. But I guess what I'm kind of wondering is, from a public perspective, if I'm an individual and I would like to sort of make a comment under the design, for example, will that be best served by me going to a consultation from the city, or is my comment better served in going to my councillor? Like, how do we sort of affect amendments and changes to sort of what we see in front of us today, and how do we be most effective in delivering some of those comments?
Yeah, I think both. I mean, obviously both aspects. You want to engage your ward councillor. You want to participate in the different different engagement activities that we're going to roll out, whether it be Zoom meetings or other means of sending out information and engaging that way. So, I mean, the idea is for us to roll out an engagement that's pretty robust, that touches a lot of different people across the city and brings them into the project. So I think just however you feel which parts you want to engage on, and I think the website will be up, and I'll have my name out there, so people can always directly contact me and email me in terms of engagement as well.
And just one last question, just to kind of give us a framework of to what extent the kind of the approval and the plan that's been put forward is really movable at this stage. To what extent is this baked in? Like, if someone were to say, for example, at a consultation, we'd like to see, I don't know, 10 less floors on those towers. Like, is that in your view off the table, or is that something that's that would be contemplated and considered through a consultation or through a representation to a councillor? Just to get a sense. I mean, I'm using that as an example, but I think people are maybe want to know to what extent, this is already sort of moving forward sort of as is.
Yeah, no, I mean, everything rests with council, right? Staff are beholden to council, and staff are going to be looking at a plan that's financially sustainable. And we have directions from the last report that went in 2022 about how to do that. And so we're going to bring forward a report to refine this, look at financial sustainability from the city's perspective. But I mean, at the end of the day, council is the ultimate decision maker on how that financial aspect looks in the end. But there's certain parameters that staff are definitely working with in terms of the directions that council has given staff.
Thank you. So that's great. I think that really catches us up overall. Thank you to all of our speakers who have provided that background during the first segment of this event. So that brings us to sort of phase 2, which is where we turn the floor over to anyone here that would like to speak. We will be starting off those discussions just with a few quick words from our local community associations. I just would like to, once again, remind everybody that as we head into these the open forum, just that we are really expecting a respectful exchange. We are hoping that everyone has an opportunity to have a voice and bring some ideas to the table. So please make your comments brief if you can. And once again, if you do have a question, I would ask you for one of our panelists, you can also raise your hand through using that little reactions button down at the bottom of your screen. You can raise your hand through that and alert us to the fact that you have a question, and we'll get to you. So I would like to just call on, to start us off, the Glebe Community Association. Is Carolyn McKenzie with us?
Yeah, thanks, Erin. I'm here. I apologize. My camera has just decided not to work this evening. But thank you for this opportunity, and thank you to Parkways for People for kickstarting what I think will be an important conversation in the city regarding the future of Lansdowne. As you mentioned early on, there's of course a proposal on the table. The GCA hasn't actually taken a position yet on the proposal. other than really to, I'll say insist, because I think that we feel very strongly about it, to insist that robust consultations really must take place before further decisions are taken on this. And also that I think we believe that those consultations are only really legitimate if they are informed by an appropriate level of transparency and access to facts, which I think was in some cases problematic in the spring when this came through council. You know, Lansdowne, it's a really important public park and public site, and it deserves a really solid plan to succeed. We're only, as Mark said, we're only 8 years after completion of Lansdowne 1.0, and we're already talking about what will be a very significant disruption with the proposed you know, investments in this site. So I think we need to be very very careful about how we move forward. We need to think about really what's in the public interest, what do residents want for this site, and at this point I just don't think we really know. So I really appreciate this conversation tonight, and I'm looking forward to hearing from people, because I think it's, in some ways, it's really the first time. I know there's been a lot of work done between OSEG and the city, but in many ways residents have not been brought into this conversation. So just as I'll try to keep my comments pretty limited, because I really do want to hear from everybody else. But I guess just as food for thought tonight, I'd like to mention just some of the sort of higher level issues that the GCA has been raising and a little bit concerned with. They're sort of higher level issues, but I think they're important in any proposal going forward. Many of the other speakers touched on ideas around people, pedestrianization, placemaking. Great ideas, and I think really worth pursuing. How do we get there? But in terms of some of the larger investments in facilities, I guess a larger question is, how will they complement or compete with other sports and entertainment sites in Ottawa, including LeBreton Flats? And can we, are we big enough? Can they all be financially sustained going forward? The second one is that obviously, and Mark Gaddy touched on this, we've spoken about it, getting in to and from events has always been the Achilles heel. I think those, Mark, I think those are your words, and I think they're very reasonable and appropriate words. Transportation is the Achilles heel of Lansdowne. For anyone who lives outside of the urban core, I personally can walk to Lansdowne. It's really not an issue for me. But if you live in Canada or the outlying suburbs of Ottawa, I can only imagine how difficult it is. And I guess a larger order question is, should we be, we're talking about investing over $150 million in a brand new event center that's not even close to an LRT line. I've seen lots in the chat about, you know, could we run a subway? Could we run an LRT underneath Bank Street, trams, that sort of thing? Are we going to make the decision to do this without any certainty, any plan whatsoever to do something like that? I don't see that in the cards. You know, are there site options that would be easier for residents across the city to get to? I think that's a reasonable question that we need to ask. Are there sites that would leverage the huge investments we're making in the LRT system? Again, another issue is, what priority should we give to the urban park and public green space? OSEG is, you know, say that the urban park is where the city is, but actually Lansdowne 2.0, this proposal would expand and encroach in a very significant way into the green space. And that was one of the points that I thought was quite obscured in the early proposal. And I think it's really important. I think people increasingly care about green space and how we're using it. It's public space. Should we allow any proposal for that matter to take up significant green space, particularly when we're talking about adding significantly in terms of population in the urban core? At Lansdowne, which I'm not at all personally adverse to adding residents to Lansdowne, and we know certainly that we're going to be adding to the urban core, and we need that green space. I guess another thing, while adding residents to Lansdowne could be very positive in terms of adding footfalls and generating demand, economic activity, are fitting 3 high-rise towers of 46, 40, and 34 stories, are they more likely to add to or reduce the attractiveness of Lansdowne to others? That again was one of the points that I think was quite obscured. I think many people don't realize, because it wasn't in the staff report, how tall those towers are that are being proposed and the potential impact of those towers. And again, those are big towers. Lots of people but nowhere near LRT and their parking constraints. And I'm personally, I'm not a proponent for adding lots of parking onto the sites, but we're nowhere near LRT. And as mentioned, I think Bank Street is near capacity in terms of transit, unless we do something quite more significant. Other issues relate to heritage and cultural assets like the Aberdeen Pavilion, the horticulture building, and how any proposal can best leverage those assets and certainly not detract from them. The environment and climate change is also something to think about. How will any proposal and what ideas do we have to progress our climate change objectives for the city through these proposals? I think if we've learned anything, and I'll stop here, if we learned anything from the LRT inquiry, I think responsible decision making demands transparency and access to information in a timely manner, particularly for a project like this that where the city has already invested so much in, and we're now proposing to invest over an additional $300 million of taxpayers' dollars. So I think we need to lift our ambition. I think we really need to obviously spend our taxpayer dollars wisely in the public interest and for people. So I'll finish my my comments there. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and thank you very much for organizing this tonight.
Thank you, Carolyn. I mean, so many themes there, I think probably resonate with all of us. And thank you for raising those points. That's super. I'd like to call upon Old Ottawa South Community Association. Is Laura here with us? I didn't see her join. You have a second. Anyone from OSCA here that would like to speak? Okay, we'll move on to Old Ottawa East Community Association. I hear we have John Dance on the line with us. Perhaps not. Bob Gordon. Okay, well, if either of you,
hi.
Hi, good, hi.
Very brief. I have just short amount of time, as I'm on full parenting duty tonight. So, thanks very much for organizing this tonight and taking the initiative to bring the whole group together. Because this discussion, I think, is important, especially to be held with the community and with the people who represent the community, obviously too. The Old Ottawa East Community Association is and always has been an active participant in the discussions on the use of the Lansdowne property. One of the core tenets of our association is the promotion of green space, and it has been the forefront of our schedule for a lot of our ideas. With that, not only do we want Lansdowne to be Ottawa's primary park, but one that is greener and promotes like more active use. This should also include like an increase in active transportation use on Queen Elizabeth Drive and Colonel By, but with a reduction in car traffic. In our view, the city and OSAG have really failed to conduct any real consultation on the future of Lansdowne, and the approvals of last year were in total absence of any discussion with neighboring communities or any residents in the city. It was just more of an internal few people on council making a couple of decisions and pushing that agenda to the commercial environment. As we see, the new urban park has been a great success, so let's build on that, not on more stores, something that was never part of the Lansdowne Park until the initial costly refurbishment was done about 8-10 years ago. We want to see a drive towards more active use rather than more consumption. Thanks.
Thank you, Bob. Last call for anyone from Old Ottawa South Community Association. And then we're going to go to Steve Ball, who's been patiently waiting there. Steve. Okay, Steve, over to you.
Thanks, Erin, and thanks for organizing this. For those that don't know me, I am the president of the Hotel Association. I'm on the board of Ottawa Tourism, the GCA. Up until 2 months ago, I was a resident of Lansdowne. I lived on Homewood, backing onto the theaters. So I love living there. It's a great park. It's a great place. One of the things I think I need to emphasize that I didn't see a lot of is the impact, the critical importance Lansdowne plays in tourism for this community. And in 2019, some of you might be surprised, we had 11 million visitors to Ottawa, 11 times the population roughly, and they spent $2.2 billion. And Lansdowne is a critical piece of the tourism pie. And I'll backtrack a bit. In 2017, I co-chaired the board that put on the Ottawa 150th anniversary celebration. Lansdowne hosted the Heritage Classic, the NHL Heritage Classic, coldest night of the year, the Grey Cup, Davis Cup. We had Canada Welcomes the World, which to me that summer was one of the greatest events. And so my point is, what wasn't talked about tonight is the critical importance that this park plays in the future of this G7 capital to promote ourselves around the world. And sitting on the board of Ottawa Tourism, it's highly competitive to compete for events. When we compete for events, it's important that our facilities are world-class, functional, and meet the needs of the demands. And so if Lansdowne's going to play that role going forward, it needs to be super sharp and it needs to be competitive so that we can actually take advantage of tourism dollars that come into this community that we all benefit from. So thank you, Erin. I just wanted to make that point. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you. Next up on my screen is Patrick Monroe. Patrick.
Hello. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, you're good.
I'll take that as yes. Okay, awesome. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak, and thanks for putting this together. I just wanted to touch on, a big topic that everyone's been talking about tonight is transport in and from Lansdowne. So we're talking about, dreaming big here, and I think the Bank Street corridor is a very important key into Lansdowne's success. Of course, there's two big trip generators on either end, being Parliament and Lansdowne. And of course, we're just talking about the tourism and the world-class image that Ottawa needs to give off. So it's important that we consider this corridor as such as well. So my big idea that I want to see implemented in Ottawa is some sort of mass transit down Bank Street. Now, I'm not opposed to a subway option. I think that, could be a bit more resilient in terms of our current climate conditions. But that being said, I think having some sort of car light or car free corridor down sections of Bank, along with trams and pedestrian facilities and bikeways, would make these locations more connected and allow for connections between other parts of the city. I think it could be a great opportunity to connect Line 2 from the south through Billings Bridge up all the way to Bank, and then link up with the proposed Quebec City tramway. Of course, we've probably seen in the provincial headlines that there's been big transit money put on the table for projects as such. And the reason I would promote a tram over a subway is just because I think that we can get more value for money and more distance covered for the same amount of money. Of course, we saw downtown, the tunnel was quite expensive to construct. So maybe if we could imagine the spaces between Lansdowne and Parliament as being one pedestrian, high street, biking, transit-friendly corridor with auto access across the streets, I think that could still maintain a lot of the car connections that we need for people and residents and businesses to get supplies and move people around, but also gives a great impetus for people to move around our capital, not only just within the parliamentary precinct, but to look at other areas in our city. So I'll leave it at that. I just wanted to put out there, I think it's a once in a lifetime opportunity, and I'd be remiss if I didn't come and advocate for some sort of Bank Street, Central Ottawa tramway connection. So thank you very much for letting me speak here.
Thank you, Patrick. I mean, we have, I don't, personally believe that Bank Street is a foregone conclusion either. We sort of seem to have this vibe of we've given up on Bank Street, but I don't know why that is, and I don't know if that needs to be that way. So thank you for offering that idea. That was really cool. Next on my screen, and just thank you for everyone to keep your comments brief because we'd like to hear from as many people as possible. So appreciate that from everybody offering some ideas. So next up I have Clinton.
Hi, thanks a lot. Clinton DeVoe, writer for Medium and some other media folks in the Ottawa-Gatineau area. The latest census data has Ottawa-Gatineau's population at 1.488 million, so almost 1.5 million. And the population, according to the latest data, is expected to exceed 1.6 million by 2027. The province of Ontario recently announced a $61.1 billion public rail transit fund. And the federal government of Canada announced a $3 billion a year public rail transit fund. If the city of Ottawa accesses those monies in order to build a Bank Street O-Train subway, would OSEG give assurances to the city that they would encourage their customers and their visitors to use the O-Train in order to help deal with the congestion issue? And I'll do a follow-up shortly after.
Oh, Clinton, is that a question to Mark Gowdy?
Well, it would be a question for Mark and anyone else on the panel that would like to comment on it.
So if there's
sorry, Clint, the question is if there was an O-Train built on Bank Street, would we ask people to use it?
Yeah, would you give the city assurances that you would encourage your customers and visitors, to use that option in order to reduce congestion on Bank Street? I'm asking because I'm writing a news story. That's why.
Yeah, Clint, of course, if there was a more, regardless of what it is, if there was a more convenient, economical way to get to Lansdowne, we would support that wholeheartedly.
Okay, great. You kind of took care of my follow-up question in your direct answer, so thanks.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Clinton. Next up, we have Miranda Gray.
Hi, my name is Miranda, and I've lived at 4 locations within 5 blocks of Lansdowne over the years. And my concern with this proposal is it seems to be bringing back the carload of the X. And I remember how tough those days were when I lived on Homewood to either get to my house or get out of my house when there were that many people there. So while I like almost every element of this plan, I don't see how they all fit in one place. This isn't as large as Central Park in New York City, but we seem to be trying to cram in soup to nuts all in one place. So I would really love the city to come back and say, we like most of these ideas, but they can't be all on one site. I'd be quite happy with the north stand that reflected the south stand and the arts center being somewhere else, because of the next 5 big transit projects, I'm not sure Bank Street to the volume you would need to have both the stadium and the arts center running at the same time will be a top priority. So it can't be dependent on a transit fix that isn't coming. So to me, that means we have too much stuff there. I would love to see it as the outdoor field sporting area, but talk about the arts center and basketball being located somewhere else. And then we can probably reduce the height of those towers, which is the other concern I have. So if we were putting less in, the towers would be less. And I'm not really sure I want more people living there. I want more people on the site. And that involves things to do for free. And again, the Arts Center takes up the space for doing free things and doing things on the water. So to me, we're trying to cram too many things in. And one way to solve that would be to take the Arts Center out. So that would be my comment.
Thank you, Miranda. And that sort of brings up this idea of like, do we have to do it all now? Is it a phased approach? Something that could be considered. That sort of came to my mind as you were talking. Get some of the pieces in first, and then maybe follow up if appropriate with other development. Gabriel, you're up.
Hi there. Can everyone hear me?
We can, yes.
Great. Yeah, thanks for putting this together. Lived close by, now in Old Ottawa East, but we used to be close to the corner of the QED and I think it was 4th. Yeah, just a longtime user, now also as a parent. You know, I think a large part of the current space, even in the transition to whatever happens in the future, I understand it's not going to make, you know, everybody happy, but like getting cars off the surface of Lansdowne would go like a really long way to making that a better experience as it exists now. Because I don't think anybody's happy. I certainly try to avoid Lansdowne as much as possible because my 3.5-year-old, he doesn't think that cars should be driving through there, and he likes to act like they shouldn't be. And it's just a very stressful experience. So, yeah, I think that would, I think that's something that could just be put forward and not, you know, I don't think everyone's going to be happy in the end. I understand. I agree with some of the comments about, you know, all the things that are there, but I think one thing as a place for people who live in the area, one thing that might be of consideration is the facility at Argyle and O'Connor, the YMCA, is literally like the only pool, recreation center within quite a ways of the downtown. I'm not even really sure where to go living in Old Ottawa East where I could easily access those facilities by transit because we don't own a car. But once that facility closes, I don't think there's going to be any public pool, gymnasium, whatever the YMCA currently offers within a large portion of the downtown. And as a place for people who live here and close by, also for people who live elsewhere, but I think it would be at least something that should be strongly considered having a facility like that, because I don't know, at least for me, it would certainly make it a more attractive proposition. Yeah, those are my thoughts. I appreciate you guys doing this. Thanks.
Thank you, Gabriel. Next on my screen is Aaron. Aaron, the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I was just loading something on my phone. 2 quick comments though here from the Ottawa Skateboard Association, just to further a lot what's been said about public consultation. In short, we worked really hard to get user feedback into the skate park there. As you can imagine, anyone who's aware of what happened, feedback was completely disregarded. So it's just, I mean, another example of kind of what happened with the lack of consultation on Lansdowne 1.0. It was sold to our user group as a beginner skate park. So 25 years of teaching skating, owning a skate shop. I was just at the program tonight. It would be dangerous to give a lesson there to a beginner. Not to say anything, we should revitalize that particular infrastructure, but just to kind of further the sentiment of the importance of public consultation. We actually did an audit and users did not rate that facility well, unfortunately. So if there was an opportunity to reevaluate programming and or infrastructure, I would love to help to make it like an amazing, beautiful facility. Second point, as a resident, I think it would be important to to uphold as much green space as possible. This is our land, it's public land. And as soon as we sell it, it's gone. I would use an example like Grant Park in Chicago. It's just green space and it's a beautiful facility. And, you know, as we continue to make decisions based on, you know, GDP or output or simply dollars, I think it's important to consider the actual users who are us. And we know that money doesn't make everything happy. So I would say maximize trees and green space because it'll be ours forever. That's it. Thank you very much.
Well said, Aaron. That's really good. And it's funny because I've been to that skate park, and it's, there's often a lot of activity there over the spring, summer, and fall. But I have a 5-year-old and a 3.5-year-old. So, I kind of, when you said that, I was like, how are they supposed to use this? They really want to. They want to bring their scooters and go. And I'm like, I don't know. So thank you for validating that. That's that kind of, it makes sense to me. So thanks, Aaron. Next I have Michelle.
Hi, nice to chat with everyone today about this. So I'm a resident of the downtown area, and I really cannot stress how much I support the idea of having a transit plan before this happens. I really don't think it can be an afterthought. I take transit up and down Bank, and I think Councillor Menard said something about the 6 and 7 serving the community well. I would not say that. They are not particularly reliable. And so I really do think we need some kind of long-term high-speed corridor there, trams, subways, whatever it is that makes sense. I love the idea of a subway that connects Parliament to Billings. I really do think that, like, I've seen plans for that online, it makes a lot of sense. In a downtown core, especially, I think there's plans going now for what stage 3 of the LRT. I don't know how far gone that is, but to continue to extend the Confederation line and not densify transit in the core doesn't seem to be the next best step for, a capital city that wants to densify the core. And then the comments on greenery, I so agree with climate change happening the way that it is. The downtown area is the hottest part of the city. We really do have to think about the fact that we need greenery to keep it a livable space. It's so important to do that, on top of all the other comments everyone has already made. I believe they said they were planning on making a smaller venue, which I think maybe flies in the face of wanting to attract marquee events that really makes it a destination space. So if you are going to put an art space, some people have said maybe cut it. If it's not going to be a significantly large enough space to attract those events, then maybe it's not worth building it there. And yeah, I love all the comments, love all the ideas, love connecting the canal to this, and putting in more density downtown. I do think a lot of this is a great idea, and so it's great to think about how we can use this space. And maybe just a quick plug for larger units. Some of us love living in condos and apartments long term, but with all the kind of studio apartments and 1-bedrooms, it's not really long term sustainable. Thanks.
Thank you, Michelle. Those are great comments. Covered a lot of ground, and yeah, I think there's lots to consider there. Thank you. I'm going to put a question in from the chat. For a question for Sean and Mark. Why is it a given that renovation of the north stands in the Civic Center has to be via vast recreation or residential and commercial development? So it sounds like why is that is one sort of generating for the other? This seems to be what the question is.
Sorry, Aaron, give me that one more time.
Yep. So why is it a given that renovation of the north stands and the Civic Center has to be via vast residential and commercial development?
So I can answer that to begin with. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Sean.
So part of the series of council decisions that were made were to task staff with looking at an OSEG to look at making sure that the project could be financially sustainable within its own. So in order to fund the Northside stand construction and the 5,500 seat event center construction, there was a financial model that was put together to see how that could be paid for. And so in terms of the council reports that went forward, and what council's direction was that one of the ideas is to go forward would be that the units or the development would then in turn internally pay for I guess the debt financing that the city would put on that 330 million financing for the two events and the event center and the stands. So that's why they're married to each other. In that respect, they're the idea is trying to have financial responsibility on how these assets would be paid for, and so that was the task that council put to staff to see how that would work.
So that's baked in, is from the sounds of it. Like there
Yeah,
has to be the towers to finance the entertainment facilities. Is that true?
yeah, it's baked in the fact that the whole revenue neutrality in terms of how is this concept be paying. Council, like in the reports that went forward, council didn't say it'd be a wider tax base that would pay for the whole project. I mean, that anything could happen in the future in terms of what the new council wants to do, but the council report talked about gave staff direction and endorsement on putting together a project that's self-sustaining. So
Yeah.
this is the model that we're moving forward with and trying to relook at the design and the units and the project and relook at the financing throughout this next step, relook at the model, dig deeper into this and understand how can this be kind of self-sustaining. And that's what staff are looking at deeper in this next phase of consultation and kind of engagement in refining the design.
I'll just add to that, Aaron, just really briefly. The model that has been set up is that 90% of the estimated property tax revenue from the proposed development would help service the debt amongst other fees coming in. And of course, there are this has been used one other time in the city, this type of model, and that was for Lansdowne 1.0. And the concern that we had raised at the time is that, residents living at Lansdowne still require city services, water and sewer, transit, libraries, and those things don't pay for themselves. So even though we're saying that the percentage of property tax from those new units would go just to this, you could say that for almost anything. If you built a new police station, well, let's put housing over the top of it and let's just pretend that housing is going to pay for the development. That's not, of course, how the city works. We all pay collectively into our tax system for collective services. And so at the end of the day, my view is we need to decouple. And I think others' views as well in council, this new council anyway, decouple the revenue neutrality notion of this and acknowledge that this is debt, it is an investment, and that it's not actually revenue neutral, even though we might call it that. It's not actually the case. And that's why the 1,200 units didn't come from like a good urban planning perspective or what the site could handle or anything like that. The 1,200 units is solely based on this financial model that's been described. And so I think that's one of the big things we need to decouple going forward, is that we're going to invest in Lansdowne, so be it, but let's not pretend that it's revenue neutral because of the housing that we've built there that would pay for the taxes. That housing would be built otherwise. It's a market dynamic in different spots in the city. So I think we need to decouple those concepts going forward. And I think staff are open to that too. I know Steve Willis, before he left, was very open to that concept of decoupling those two things, because I think they saw there wasn't as much rigor in that type of a financial arrangement. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you for clarifying. Next, just because Clinton, you've already had a turn, so I'm going to go to somebody new here. Gerald.
Thank you. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Thank you so much for this opportunity. So I'll start by saying just a bit of a background. I've been a farmer's market vendor since 2009. So prior to Lansdowne 1.0, moving over to Brewer Park and then coming back to Lansdowne. And this question actually relates to the Aberdeen Pavilion. We've seen so much development happen at that site. We've seen them shift the horticulture building, which is the previous site of the original farmer's market. And I'm curious to know why in every rendering do we not see a plan for the Aberdeen Pavilion? It feels like there's such a lost opportunity with what to me is, the most historic building on that site. The first thing that comes to mind, I imagine, is heritage, but certainly there must be some workarounds to making something happen with that site. Outside of any sport or concerting events, it's the farmers market that draws in the next biggest crowd to that site. And so, I'm just curious to, hear an answer, whether that's from the councillor, whether it's from OSEG, as to why the pavilion is not being considered for, whatever work that needs to happen to make it into something that we see. We have the St. Lawrence Market in Toronto. We have, so many examples around the country, let alone, looking overseas for something that can be done with that site to make it more, community welcoming, which it is. We know already it is because it's used. But if you ever go into that building for these events, you'll hear the heaters. You might think that something's going to fall down on you. There's cracks in the building and cold is coming in. So depending where you might be located for your booth, you're freezing in there as well too. So I'm just interested to hear why we are working around this one particular building on this site when so much potential is there for it. Thank you.
I'm not sure whose question this is. Is this a Sean Moore question?
Aaron, I can answer that in brief. I mean, it is part of the pieces of reporting to council that have to go back. The city staff have to look at both the horticulture building and the Aberdeen Pavilion in terms of how they can be retrofitted for like air conditioning, and particularly the Aberdeen, like a roof replacement and heating to make it more of a 3-season building, which would then bring in different types of events and activities that could happen once, like as you said, in terms of the lack of heating and so forth. So there are capital improvements that staff are tasked to look at, and they're just they're outside of the kind of the mixed or this Lansdowne arrangement with the event center, Northside stands, retail, and air rights above. They're a capital project that would be funded through like capital city money to do improvements to those 2 buildings, which we know need to happen in order to leverage those 2 great buildings in terms of bringing in better more events and users and so forth. Like I think an example, the horticulture building is a industrial kitchen that could, that's just not there to serve events properly or larger events, things like that. So those are on staff's tasks.
Thank you. Next up, we have Kate.
You hear that?
Hello, thank you. My name is Kate. I am with CNIB and a person myself who is blind. And I just wanted, I've listened to the ideas and some of them sound really great. I just wanted to highlight the importance of making sure that accessibility is part of this plan, because I have not heard that word mentioned once. But when we're looking at things like building pedestrian ways or like transit, that kind of thing, Lansdowne 1.0, what we have now, there are some beautiful spaces and then parts of it that are really difficult. So for example, the streets and the sidewalks are all cobbled to look exactly the same, which for someone who has low vision, it's hard to tell when I'm on the road and when I'm on the sidewalk, which isn't the most safe thing, as you can imagine. So I just wanted to highlight the importance of making sure that accessibility is a consideration so that you make a space that is welcoming and inclusive of all the people who might want to come and, hang out and enjoy Lansdowne.
Thank you so much for raising that, Kate. That's really important. Really valuable example. It's great, just that kind of specifics really kind of orients, things that, other people may not be aware of, the challenges that may be faced by others. So thank you for raising that. That's really critical. Is there any plans that anyone can offer? Any considerations that are being undertaken to appreciate better accessibility on the proposed site?
I can just jump in and just say that I know that both the Bank Street review of that corridor within the Glebe and Ottawa South, there's a full review coming of those streets and accessibility key town site itself. I know this was raised in CNIB, obviously very active here over the Bank Street Bridge within the site, and have made fantastic contributions in the design of the lead up into the Bank Street Bank Street Bridge, for example, and into Lansdowne. And so I know that in any kind of remodeling or staff report exercises with our Accessibility Advisory Committee, those things are going to have to be considered in any type of remodeling, refurbishment, rebuild, whatever it might be within the site. So just appreciate the comments, and I think there's been a lot of success in working together in the areas we have already in terms of making sure accessibility is at the forefront. I know this should be no different moving forward. So appreciate the comments.
Thank you. I'd also like to throw out that CNIB has published, and you may be aware of this already, a set of guidelines for making the built environment accessible. It's all at clearingourpath.ca, which is a nice, easy to remember site, and it goes into all sorts of detail about all kinds of, built environment things, from streets to buildings, etc.
That's great to know. Thanks. Thanks, Kate.
You're welcome.
Erin, if I can just
Yes,
respond
please.
on that as well. Thank you, Kate, for raising that. And I think especially on the pedestrianized streets, it's been a great concern as well here in Montreal around all the projects that have been developed. And I know we have different groups of users with disabilities that have been involved in commenting on it, and especially with delineation of when the levels are the same between the sidewalk and the street, and that gets really complicated to maneuver. So I think it's just a great point that any space that we want to make more open and livable and very easy to use is also can be a great risk for some other users. So it's just a perspective that is really key on those type of projects.
Thank you.
Next we have Joshua Franklin.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for putting on this consultation. I was really happy to see all the examples. I thought that was really cool that people were saying we should have like possibly a swimming area in the canal. I don't know if that's possible or how clean the canal would be, but that would be cool. Pedestrianized areas. I know Lansdowne gets pretty crowded with cars on events, and I don't know, every day. So I think that was a great idea too. And an active connections for walking, biking, and other active uses. I really do think transit is an issue for Lansdowne getting there. The 6 and the 7 get stuck in traffic all the time. So yeah, and they're really crowded. I think that Lansdowne is situated in a really good place for 15-minute communities. Like there's grocery stores, library, rink, dentist, pharmacy, lots of restaurants. It's in a really good place, and I think that we should try to get as much housing as we can in the site, as we have like an affordability crisis for housing. I think that it would be nice to have more towers. I don't know if they considered putting them on the arena, that like I saw in the Breton plan, they had towers on the edges of the arena. I think that for a low, like if you're on the street level, the normal like Lansdowne has 4 to 6 story like buildings already that would already block like that line of sight. You wouldn't really see them from, I don't know, some of the side streets and Bank Street. So I think that that's a good option to house more people. I think to solve this crisis of housing, we need to I don't know, make more options to build housing so it can lower the price everywhere in the city. The more opportunities we have for housing and dense housing and in 15-minute communities will stop like the destruction of green space on the outskirts of the city where like natural habitats of animals live, and reduce GHG emissions from expanding the suburbs to build housing. Thanks so much. Thanks,
Joshua, sorry. Those are really great comments. I know that housing is a huge concern for a lot of us here, and the future does look bleak on that front just in general. So I hear what you're saying. I just want to note that it's 8:50, and I apologize. I haven't really mentioned this before when time sort of got away from me. If anyone has to leave and they're sort of kicking, kind of holding on, for the end of this, you please, you can absolutely check out the recording that we're going to post to YouTube. If you do have to leave, please go ahead. I know that's a 2-hour event is maybe more than you probably bargained for. So I just wanted to say that. And if anyone who continues to have comments or views, like, please keep them coming. Like, we will continue to be here. Some of our speakers may have to step out, so just keep that in mind. But I think the group of us here is really happy to keep hearing these really great visions and views and comments. So just want to put that out there. Next up, I have Boyd McBride.
Thanks very much, Erin, and thank you for all the work you've done to put on this public consultation. I live near Lansdowne. I'm over there 3 or 4 times a week, so I know the site pretty well. And I have to say, I was opposed to its development, and when it was Lansdowne 1-0. And I'll also say I've been a bit concerned about this densification. Joshua just before me was saying, we need more, we should have more housing, we should have more. It seems to be the theme. And yet, it is a very limited site. And it's called Lansdowne Park. It was all designated parkland. Most of it has been given over to commercial development and housing. There's very little that can really be called park now. And this proposal, Lansdowne 2.0, apparently, unless things have changed since I last inquired about this, will take over more than 2 acres, 1.7 acres, 55,000 square feet of what is currently green space for more development. And that big oval green roof, which kind of looks like parkland, in fact is not. It's not load bearing, so no one will be allowed on it. And so I see in this development the end of quite a bit of what little parkland is actually left in Lansdowne Park. That really troubles me.
Yeah, thank you for stating that concern. I've heard that myself. It's with more density comes more need for those public spaces. So I can appreciate that feels even more urgent perhaps with those towers there. So thank you for raising that. That's I think a concern that a lot of people share.
Okay, thank you.
So if anyone has any comments who has not yet spoken, please raise your hand and we'll come to you. Otherwise, Neil, yep.
Erin, can I just ask a question to Sean? And that's, so I appreciate the presentation earlier on the consultation process, but I have to admit that I didn't fully understand what was being decided when and what consultations were taking place in support of what decisions. Would it be possible to produce just a list of when the decision points are, sort of what months the decision points are, what's being decided on, and the consultations that would go into those? Because what I think I'm hearing is that there's decisions related to like the stadium/commercial part that are being separated from the decisions related to the public realm part. And that kind of worries me because I think the two, this works if the two of them are, the two of them depend upon each other. And if we are parceling it all off and making individual decisions, I'm just not sure it's going to add up to the whole that we are hoping for. So as a first step, could the city please provide us with a list of when, when what decisions are being made when, and what consultations feed into those?
Yeah, that's not a problem, Neil. I think you caught us very early. I wanted to participate and meet the community and hear their ideas and be part of this, but you caught us early because we haven't fully rolled out and developed the whole consultation strategy, which is why it hasn't hasn't launched yet. So early, it's still a bit early to pinpoint all the touch points and all the dates. That's why my slide was more generic in terms of the concept of what reports would go forward, and they certainly will be inclusive. Like the project won't be piecemealed in terms of the urban park and the other pieces. It'll all be discussed, and but we will be in touch as we roll out the public engagement and have more timelines and when things are happening, and we'll certainly communicate that with you.
Can I just ask too, this is a bit of a bold question, if I may, but given what we've seen in the past, will we be given more than 10 days to the next phase of consultations? I think it's, I think there's, people maybe, if I may say, maybe you feel like it's early, but I think a lot of us feel like it's quite late. So I just want to, if you could give us a bit of assurance as to, the amount of time we would have on maybe the first decision point. I think that would give people some comfort and might start rebuilding some of the trust that has maybe been a bit shaken since the proposal was presented.
No, that's a good point, Aaron, because actually when I say, you're right, it's perspective. I'm jumping on this project just within the last 6 to 8 weeks. So you're right, early for me, but it's not early. So you're right. And like the idea is that consultation would be, a February to Q3 before reports rise to their particular committees and to council. So yes, now's when we need to provide that full engagement and get trust, try and regain trust and whatnot with the community. Absolutely, point taken.
Thank you. Has anyone else who hasn't spoken yet would like to say a few words? Otherwise, we'll go. Brian.
Yes, I hope you can hear me.
We can, yes.
Okay, good. So I'm sorry to have to say this because it's really almost too late. It is too late, but let's keep in mind that this project should never actually have happened at all, and that the city basically lied to us by holding information back that proved that the original application or the original intervention by OSEG or the Lansdowne Live at the time was based on the fooling the public into thinking that the stadium had to be at Lansdowne. It didn't. And it took us a year to get the letter between the CFL and the city from Kent Kirkpatrick at the time to show that, in fact, that was never true. So we have screwed ourselves because really the stadium and all those big public facilities shouldn't really be at Lansdowne. They should be where Bayview is, where the LRT and the O-line intersect. And from then on, it's almost like too late. And now we're trying to put way too much, mostly commercial and private, onto what was a public site that was possibly, when they were going to have the design competition, possibly going to be something very much in the public, for the public good. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Anyone else? In that case, let's go back to Clinton.
So my question, Clinton DeVoe, Medium news writer. My question is for the two Seans on the panel. Are you examining, assuming that Lansdowne 2.0 moves forward, are you examining the congestion issue on Bank Street? What would do you have any sort of data or numbers around what a Bank Street O train would mean for the ridership on Confederation Line 1? And what would that mean, having an O train? What would that mean for congestion? So basically, I guess my question would be, what would it mean for Confederation Line 1 ridership? What would it mean for congestion on Bank? And do you have any sort of numbers, and have you asked anyone to give you some sort of feedback on that, so that members of the public can be better informed. And that was for the two Seans.
I think Sean Menard has left us for the evening. Our speakers are free to go at what we're
Sorry,
saying.
well, then
free
it's
to go at
for
9.
Sean or anyone else on the panel then.
I have a quick, I could answer that. I just have it's a quick no. We don't have it because it's not a project that's before us. We have no information on that. The city has a transportation master plan that it's working on right now. And so that master plan would feed how we are moving people around the city. And so with what you're describing is something that's not in the transportation master plan. So it's at the idea stage, I guess. So we don't have any information on that.
So just a quick follow up then. Sorry, just because it's not often I get this opportunity.
I know, but we're just trying to keep this focus really on Lansdowne at this point. So if we could have follow-ups maybe directed to us, we can sort of divert the question and kind of focus
and perhaps
more directly
actually,
on Lansdowne.
If I can, Aaron, actually, maybe if you wanted to follow up with our media relations folks at the city, because I think all the media relations should be run through the city on if there's any follow-ups on that.
Super. Thank you, Clinton. So I just want to say there's just a few kind of concluding comments here. For those who have to leave at this point, thank you so much for coming. For those who want to stay on, please feel free to do so. Parkways for People will stay on and chat with you for pretty much as long as you're here. I would like to just thank the speakers that are still with us. Again, you're free to stay, free to go at this point, but I just wanted to say thank you so much for your time tonight and for your clarifying remarks on this proposal. Very much appreciated. But please feel free, anyone, to stay on if they so choose. So next up, we have Patrick again. Patrick Monroe.
Hi, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak again. I just was noticing throughout the course of the conversation, there seems to be two, schools of thought or two reactions, I suppose. There's the long-term goal of what we want with this, which is a dense corridor, Bank Street / Lansdowne, rail transit, great pedestrian, greenery, park spaces, etc. But I think short term, there's a lot of things we can do to support Lansdowne and support Bank Street as well. Of course, the first and foremost thing is housing density. Of course, our political leaders seem to have left the chat, unfortunately, but just for the record, hopefully they can support some sort of housing reform to allow gentle and middle density that's missing from a lot of the downtown core. That could go a long way to maybe reducing some of the size of these skyscrapers and or saving some green space in the medium to long term. And then second, I think there's an opportunity as well. I posted in the chat earlier, but just supporting the infrastructure on Bank Street to direct people to Lansdowne on game days, I think could go a long way. So for example, we could potentially revitalize Bank Street, similar to Rue Saint-Denis in Montreal, having wide bike lanes on either side, 3 lanes, maybe 1 lane of traffic either way, and then vehicle parking along the road. And then during game days, you can close down that corridor to transit, so you can have quick connections from either north to downtown or south into parking lots at Billings Bridge, so people can park and then get shuttled into the games. And I think these are both very possible ideas, because I was very surprised. I didn't know the data on this, but Mark was saying that only 30% of people arrive to Lansdowne by car. So if you're looking at mode share in North America in the 21st century, those numbers are pretty impressive. Usually mode share is much more car dominated than that. Of course, we're space constricted, or constrained, but I think there's a lot of opportunity in the short term to give some sort of transit priority on game days and promote strong cycling infrastructure in the downtown core, and that will get a lot of the downtown residents or just adjacent residents out of their cars, and then people who are coming from the suburbs can drive down here. There's a place to park, and they hop on and hop off the shuttle without having to think too much about the process. So I just wanted to split that up into the two schools of thought, I guess, both the long-term vision, but also short-term, what we can do to support the space.
Thank you, Patrick. You've put a lot of thought into this, it sounds like, and really appreciate some of this, the detailed thought that's going into how to reorient Bank Street. I mean, it's, as I say, I don't think it's a foregone conclusion either. And I think we have to be really creative on how we use, I'm sure there's a technical word for this, incoming streets, I don't know, that sort of feed into Lansdowne. So thank you for those comments. Miranda.
Yeah, this was going to be a question for Councillor Menard, but I'll make it a comment instead. It seems to me that the previous council was pretty clear on the financial directives, but not on the use directives. Are we building a sports center that benefits people in the glebe, a center of attraction for Ottawa residents like Moody Drive? Or are we trying to build a byward market, which we claim is something you would come around the world to see? Those are very different visions. And I think from my point of view, I need to stop saying Lansdowne. I need to say Lansdowne Park, because for me, the park is important. I'll leave it there.
No, it's true. It's the, what's the objective here? Like the global objective. And it's true once you start thinking about, you kind of have these silos, right, of these things and those things. And there's, as you say, there's so much going on in the site. What is the global objective? Appreciating that, there's the public, there's OSEG, there's the city, there's the NCC. And I think it's very easy for a structure like that to, maybe not have a common objective or a sort of a cohesive objective. So, when you really look at it. So thank you for raising that. I think that's really an important point. What are we trying to achieve, globally? Carolyn, you had your hands up before. I'm not sure if you still want to offer some comments.
Yeah, thanks, Erin. Just briefly, I guess I'm hearing a lot of commentary about the transportation theme, and lots of commentary about the possibility of whether it's an underground, LRT extension or south or trams. And, I think those are all really interesting ideas. Also about rethinking Bank Street and how the use of Bank Street, that presumably is something sort of reallocating some of the right of way on Bank Street to more active use, perhaps. There are lots of options there to consider. But I think one thing that is important to to keep in mind that even a tram, let alone an LRT, I can't even imagine how many years out that sort of a solution is. And I would personally be concerned, and I'm speaking from a personal perspective right now, that we as a city would move ahead with this sort of investment in these sort of facilities at Lansdowne, hoping that perhaps 5-10 years, closer to 10 years, I imagine, down the road, we might get something more substantial in terms of transit on Bank Street in some way, shape, or form. That to me just doesn't make sense. That seems to be putting the cart well before the horse. So, and it seems like it's a very large risk associated with this project if we just sort of hope that there's that sort of a transportation solution down the road. I just think we can't gloss over. This is transportation is the Achilles heel. We just can't afford to kind of gloss over that. Lots of things we can do to make it a little bit better. Again, for those of us who live in the glebe, not so much of an issue. But for residents across the city, I believe it to be a very big issue, and one that is going to be central to the future success of those investments that we're looking at making at Lansdowne. Thanks.
Thank you. I totally agree. Well, everyone, we may have come to the end. I just want to say thanks so much for everyone's presence tonight, for your engagement. We really believe that this is kind of the foundation for making Lansdowne a success, bringing the community together, sharing views. There's just so many great ideas here, and I think we've really done a good job in helping people sort of, get caught up on the file and figure out maybe what we can do going forward to kind of improve the plans. We do look forward to hearing that timeline that Sean was mentioning on the consultations. Certainly, I'm very interested in seeing what that looks like. So we will, when we get that, if the city hasn't published it, we will ensure that that goes out on our social media so that people are kind of informed as to when the next touch point might be. We will be summarizing the themes that we've heard tonight in some way, shape, or form. I'm not sure what yet, but we'll be assembling that. So thank you all for your time tonight. If you would like to get in touch with us, Parkways for People, you can reach us at info@parkwaysforpeople.ca. We are on Twitter and Facebook, and we have a website. Oh, sorry, I just mentioned the website, parkwaysforpeople.ca. So thanks so much, everyone, and have a great evening.
Thanks for letting me attend, Aaron. Appreciate it very much. Very good job. Way to go.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Emily.
Mark. Thanks, everyone, for sharing.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Susan.
Very interesting conversation.
Thank
you so much.